This conference will now be recorded.
Right, let's start. Is my voice is audible and clear to everyone?
Yes.
Yes,
Hello,
sir.
can you be, is it clear?
Yes, yes. Yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
okay, fine. Okay, right. So in the last class, we have started with BADIs. We have seen how to identify the BADIs in a transaction, and we have done the implementation for what one of the standard BADI in XD01T code. We add the BADI what a customer underscore add underscore data, right? So that customer underscore add underscore data is migrated to what enhancement spot. It is a old BADI which is available in the previous versions also. From 6.0, the BADI definitions are stored inside enhancement spot. So whenever you get the information like migrated to enhancement spot means you have to understand that this BADI is available in older versions also. Okay, right. So we have identified this BADI and then we have done the implementation for our BADI. And I told that from 6.0, BADI implementations are stored inside what? Enhancement implementations. So when we try to implement this BADI, since in this version the BADI is stored inside the enhancement spot, it was asking to store the BADI implementation inside what? Enhancement implementation. Okay, right. So I propose a BADI implementation name. Then on top of that BADI implementation, SAP itself will provide what? Implementation class. What is the naming convention for that implementation class? CL underscore IM underscore followed by the BADI implementation name. And this is an enhancement implementation. We have implemented the method what? Check all data. So for this BADI customer underscore data, we add how many implementations? Some 4 implementations. These 4 implementations, these 4 BADI implementations are spread across what? 3 enhancement implementations. In the first enhancement implementation, we have 2 BADI implementation, and in the second enhancement implementation, we add another BADI implementation, and in the third enhancement implementation, we have one more BADI implementation. So overall, 4 BADI implementations spread across what? 3 enhancement implementation. And when this method is called by SAP, this method is called by SAP whenever I try to save the customer. Okay, so in XD01T code, after entering the required customer data, when you click on the save button, SAP might have triggered the value what? Customer add data. As part of the triggering, SAP might have called the method what? Check all data. And whenever that method is called, SAP will check whether it contains any active implementations, right? So if it contains active implementation, it will execute that. So that server, I'm having the issue, I cannot open now today. Okay, I'll use it from the next session. So this is a different server, but anyhow, this is the thing we have implemented in the last class. I have not shared this material. I'll share it today. Okay, and some of you are more keen on materials. Okay, so uh, right, so don't join the courses only for the material and recording. And from this batch also, the material and recordings are shared outside the network. Okay, so we got that information, right? So if that continues, If that continues, the recordings and material will be stopped to that particular participant. It's a strict information from GEMSOF's team. From this crosshash batch also, the recordings and materials are shared outside the network. So please don't do it. If it repeats again, abruptly they'll stop the recording, they'll stop the material, they'll stop sending the meeting ID also. Okay, so please, okay, when you paid the fees, you take the advantage. Don't circulate it outside. Okay, don't cheat yourself. Okay, right. So let us implement the actual implementation. What was our requirement? Uh, if the customer is an Indian customer, industry should be what mandatory. Industry should be made mandatory. So let us implement that. So this is another server, right? So first let me run the T code XD01. I'm running the T code XD01, right? So as usual, account group, I'll choose it as what? Sold to party R3 to CRM. Okay, try to understand. Sold to party R3 to CRM. I'm not providing any other data. I'll press enter. Right, I'll give the title. Then I'll provide some name. Right, what are the mandatory fields are there? I'll provide. Any of name is not mandatory, but for our identification, I give some name, and I'll give the country as what? India. Done. And in the control data tab, I'm not providing any industry key. Okay, so let me save it. Right, so when I try to save the customer, it is allowing me to save. What is the message I got in the status bar? Account 301535 has been created. Account 301535 has been created. So it is allowing me to save the Indian customers. So what I'll do is, let us try to do the actual implementation. So last class only we identified. If you go to BADI SC18 for BADI definitions, okay, what is the enhancement spot customer? Then in this case, the enhancement spot name and the BADI name was what? Same. Okay, so I can navigate either through this or through this. So I'll go for what? The enhancement spot customer underscore add underscore data. If I display this enhancement spot is showing you what? One BADI definition. If I expand this BADI definition, we have implementations here. If I double click on implementations, we don't have any Z implementations. There is no active implementation available. There are already some implementation. It is not our implementation. These are standard implementation. We need not bother about that. But we don't have any custom Z implementations, right? And we also understood that this BADI is a multiple use. And we also understood that every BADI definition will be associated with what? BADI interface. If I double click on this BADI interface, right, we need to implement the appropriate method. So what is the method I need to implement? Check all data. In the last session, we have done 4 BADI implementation. In all the 4 BADI implementations, I implemented only one method. What is that method? Check all data. So it is not compulsory that in every BADI implementation we need to implement the same method. No. So as of now, the requirement is what? What is the requirement? If the customer is Indian customer, industry should be what? Mandatory. So what is the suitable method? Check all data. So what I'll do is, I'll provide the first implementation. As part of that first implementation, I will implement a method called as what? Check all data. What are the actual implementations that I'll provide. Then, since this BADI is a multiple use, I'll provide one more implementation. In that implementation, according to my requirement, I will implement the appropriate method. So what I want to convey is, this is important, try to understand. In the last session, since our BADI is a multiple use, I am able to implement what? 4 BADI implementations. But in all the 4 BADI implementations, I implemented only one method. What is that method? Check all data. It is not compulsory to implement the same method across the implementations. In each implementation, we can implement any of the method based on our requirements. So initially, let me implement check all data. What are the parameters I need to consider here? S underscore KN1 type what? KN1. This is the parameter which is carrying our validation field. So let me provide the implementation. So where do we provide the implementation? SE 19. So I'll go to SC19. SC19. Right. We have two blocks: edit implementation, create implementation. We have to go for edit implementation block when you want to modify existing implementations. But now I'm doing the fresh implementation. So in the create implementation block, I'll choose what? Either new BADI or what? Classic BADI. If I choose classic BADI, I have to give the BADI name. What is the BADI name? Customer data. So in this case also, first what happens here? It is asking for the BADI implementation. After proposing the BADI implementation, on top of that BADI implementation, it has proposed the implementation class. And whenever we try to implement a method, we got the message saying that it got migrated to enhancement implementation. So it was asking to select or create the enhancement implementation. So in both the cases, it is mandatory that you have to provide the enhancement implementation. So I can follow either of the navigation. So I'll go for what? New BADI. I will try to implement which enhancement spot? Customer underscore add underscore data. So try to understand what is the enhancement spot we are trying to implement? Customer underscore add underscore data. Last class I told one enhancement spot can contain any number of what? BADI definitions. But in this case, this enhancement spot has got only one BADI definition. So what I want to convey is when you are implementing the enhancement spot, when you are implementing any enhancement spot, we can implement the appropriate BADI definition. One enhancement spot can contain what? Any number of BADI definitions. Suppose assume that we have an enhancement spot, for example, ABC. Inside this ABC enhancement spot, we have three BADI definitions like BADI 1, BADI 2, BADI 3. It is not compulsory to implement all the three BADI definitions. We can implement any BADI definition which is appropriate for our requirement. But in this case, any of this enhancement spot contains only what? One BADI definition. So what is that enhancement spot I have to provide here? Customer underscore add underscore data. I'll click on create implementation. Yeah. So in this navigation, what is happening? First, it is asking the enhancement implementation. Later, it will ask you for what? BADI implementation. Right? If I follow this navigation, here you have to provide what? The BADI name. The BADI name. Right? So when you try to implement this BADI, first it will ask you what? BADI implementation name. Later on, it will ask you what? Enhancement implementation. Understood? So there is no advantage, disadvantage. I can go by either of the technique. Understood? But in both the cases, the BADI implementation gets stored inside what? Enhancement implementation. So let us, I'll follow this navigation. This is enhancement spot. Click on create implementation. It is asking the enhancement implementation name. So I'll give it as ZENH-IMPL1. ZENH-IMPL1. Provide the short text. I'll put the short text as enhancement implementation one. Just leave this field composite enhancement, just leave it. So just propose the enhancement implementation name, continue. Enhancement implementation also is a separate object. So it is asking to save it inside the package. So I'll save it in what? Local object. Right. So you can see it. Create BADI implementation. It is asking which BADI definition you want to implement. As I told you, one enhancement spot can contain any number of BADI definition. So which BADI definition you want to implement? Anyhow, this particular enhancement spot has got only one BADI definition. So choose this only BADI definition. If you have multiple, it will show all the BADI definitions in the drop down. We have to choose the appropriate BADI definition. So in this case, we have only one. Then I'll select this. For this BADI definition, we have to propose what? The BADI implementation name. As I told you, you can provide any implementation. I'll give the implementation name as something, some implementation name I'll give zcust impl1, zcust impl1. And for this BADI implementation, we have to propose the implementation class. If you follow this navigation, based on your BADI implementation name, SAP itself will propose the implementation class name. What is the naming convention? CL underscore IM underscore implementation name. So since we know that naming convention, let us follow the same naming convention. You can give anything whatever you want, no problem, it will work. But when you are doing the migration from one version to the higher version, there you'll have the issues. That is the reason, let us stick to the coding standards recommended by SAP. Even if you don't follow the coding standards, it will work here. But in future, if the customer is enhancing to new release, new version, at that time SAP will cross check this particular standards. If the standards are not followed, again I have to recreate. So understood. Instead of recreation, here only let us follow the naming convention. So I'll say Z, what is that? CL underscore IM underscore. I'll give you the name as that cust IMPL1. So on top of the BADI implementation, I am proposing the implementation class continue. Implementation class also is a separate object. It is asking to save. I'll save it in the local object. Done. Right. So this is my enhancement implementation. This enhancement implementation containing is having what? One BADI implementation, right? So if I expand this, this BADI implementation is implementing which BADI here? Customer underscore add underscore data. What is the interface behind this? If underscore ex underscore customer add data. So how do you proceed now? We have to navigate to the implementation class. Implementation class is the one which actually implements the BADI interface. So if I double click on implementing class, this is the implementing class. What is the method we are interested to implement? Check all data. So I'll double click on this. Interface method was not implemented. Do you want to create the implementation? Yes. Right. What is the method it has opened? Check all data. So here you write the logic. So what is the required parameter? S underscore K. So no one will tell us to use this parameter or the other parameter. We have to do the R&D. So I'll just say if S underscore KN1 hyphen land1 equal to what? India and S underscore KN1 hyphen BRSCH is what? Initial. I'll give the message Indian customers, or I'll say industry key is mandatory for Indian customers type E. If you give error only, it will stop the activity. If I give information, it will continue to save. It will give the information message, it will continue to save, but I want to stop the activity. So I'm providing the error message. Save, check for the syntax, activate. Done, activated. Alright, I'll put the breakpoint here just to understand at what stage this method will be called by SAP. We cannot control that. Go back. Right, better to activate the implementation class. So out of many methods, we have implemented only what? One method. According to object oriented principles, if a class implements any interface, the class must implement all the methods of the interface, at least the null implementation. So this implementation class is implementing this BADI interface, out of which we implemented only one method. For the rest of the methods, SAP will provide what? Null implementation. So I'll double click on what? Sorry, double click on implementation class. Better we activate this. Done. Go back, activate your enhancement implementation. Active object generated. Done. So we have done the implementation. Let me test it. So I'll go to XZ01. So the place where the BADI getting triggered, the place where the method is getting called is important. Understood? So we should know how to use the T code. Then only if you perform different actions in the transaction at appropriate place, the appropriate BADI gets triggered. So whenever that BADI gets triggered, SAP will call the appropriate methods. Whenever that method gets called, SAP will check what are the active implementations. So I'll just run the T code XD01, right? It is not triggered. It is not triggered in the initial screen. Am I clear? How can you say it is not triggered? Because I gave the breakpoint in that method. It is not stopping there means that method is not getting called in the initial screen, means the BADI is not yet triggered. So I'll just choose account group as what? R3 to CRM, right? I'll continue. It is not yet triggered. Okay, I'll just give some title, provide some description and some name, not description, name. I'll give the country as what? India. Done. Why I'm not giving the other countries is, if I give the other countries, we don't know what are the validations that if I give Germany, we have to give the postal code, all those things. It should be valid entries. So since we are not aware, I'm going for what? India. If you are aware of that data, you can give that. So I'll just save it. Good. The moment I click on the save button, what happened? SAP might have triggered that BADI. As part of that BADI triggering, SAP might have called which method? Check all data. Since there is an active implementation available, it is stopping at that particular implementation. So if you see the land one India, if you see BRSC, it is initial. So and operator means both the conditions should satisfy. So it is satisfied. When I say F5, it will flash the error message. So I got the message industry key is mandatory for what? Indian customers. So I'll do one thing. I'll go to control data. I'll give the industry as something. I'll give something agriculture. I'll save it. So once again, the BADI gets triggered. Once again, SAP will call that method. Then it is calling, right? So land one is India. BRS is agriculture. If condition not satisfied. So when I say F5 or F8, what happened? It has continued to what? Create the customer account. Customer is created. So what is the understanding? The check all data method is called by SAP when you click on what? Save button. When you click on the save button. Okay. Now see the other validation. It is a multiple use BADI. So see the meaning of multiple use. Multiple use means I can have any number of what? Implementations, any number of active implementations. So already initially my customer requirement is this one I've implemented. Now after a few months or after a few years, same customer has got another requirement in the same transaction. He wants another requirement. So without disturbing the existing implementation, I need to provide what? Additional implementation. So what is my requirement here is, observe this carefully. I'll run the T code XG01. I'll do one thing. I'll go back to that implementation SC19, or let it be like that. So I'll go to XD01. I'll go to XD01. Yeah, account group. I'll choose R3 to CRM. Observe this carefully. I have not given any company code here. I have not given any company code. I'll go inside. Right. I'll give some title. Right. So I'll just give some country. Done. After this, yeah. So I didn't get any control data here. Now you can see on the application toolbar. Yeah, on the application toolbar, I don't have any button like company code. I don't have any button like what? Company code. Understood? We are having the buttons like other customer, additional data empties, additional data DSD, sales information DSD, something like this. I don't have any button on the application toolbar like a company code. Remember this. I'll save it. So as usual, it is triggering that method check all data. Fine, I'll say F8. It will not allow me to save. So let me, I want to cancel. I don't want to provide the industry. I'll just click on cancel. Do you want to cancel? Yes. So I'm able to cancel. Right. Now see the change. I'll give the account group. Now, while creating the customer, I'll give the company code. Okay, so I'll browse this. I'll give some company code which I know. I'll just give some company code 1000. So far, we are not giving the company code. Now I give the company code. So I'll go inside. Right. I'll give some title. What are the mandatory fields are there in this address tab? I'll give it. Done. Now you can see on the application toolbar, we have a button what? Company code data. Company code data. I'll click on this button. Understood? Earlier, this button was not there. Now it is available because while creating the customer in the initial screen, I gave some company code. So when I click on this, yeah, right. So I got some information here. Here you can see we have a tab what? Account management. There is a field called as reconciliation account. In the company code data, we have a tab strip control. Already we know, we are expected to know. A tab strip control is a collection of what? Tab buttons. We have a tab what? Account management. Right? We have the tab what? Account management. Reconciliation account. My customer requirement is whenever I try to capture the company code data, whenever this screen is displayed, whenever this screen is displayed, I want some value to be defaulted here. Understood? I want some value to be defaulted in the field what? Reconciliation account. Some value has to be defaulted. Okay. So that is my validation here. What is the validation? What is the requirement of the customer? Whenever the user tries to capture a company code data, the reconciliation account field value should be defaulted. Means it should be displayed with some value. Later on the user can change it, but I want some default value to be shown. Okay, so in our selection screen, if you want any default value, we use something default addition parameters as part of parameter statement. We use default. In module pool, if you want any default activity, we will write that logic in the PBO event because PBO is a first event which gets triggered. Okay, so here also I want some value to be defaulted in the reconciliation account. So this is my validation field. Let me collect what is the name of this field. I'll collect the name of this field. How do I collect the name of the field? I'll put the cursor, I'll press F1. Put the cursor in that validation field, I'll press F1. Reconciliation account in general ledger. Okay, I'll click on the button what? Technical information. When I click on the button technical information, yeah, what is the table name they gave here? KNB1 is the table name. What is the screen field name? KNB1-AKONT. What is the name of the screen field? KNB1-AKONT. What is the base table? KNB1 is a table. Okay, so keep this in point. So what I have to do now? Yeah, how do you approach now? Anyone? That is my validation. My customer requirement is whenever the user tries to capture company code data, the reconciliation account field should be defaulted with some value. So how do you approach? Anyone? I want the approach. Yes, can anyone tell me how do you approach now? This is the requirement given to us by the functional consultant. He don't know how to do it. Okay, he will tell that in so and so transaction SG01, he will tell you how to use that screen, how to use the transaction, but you don't know how to implement it. So it is a job of a BAP consultant. How do I proceed now? Anyone? Yes, anyone? How do I proceed? I want the approach. It is not the custom program, Sandeep. It is a standard program. That screen is already called by SAP. In that called screen, I need to provide some default value. If it is our custom screen, I can directly open in change mode, I can do it. I cannot modify the standard programs, I cannot modify the standard screens. How do I approach anyone? Okay, so what I'll do is, so this is a requirement given to us by the functional consultant. So what we have to do initially, we need to identify the baddies in that particular transaction. Okay, we may have n number of baddies now. We have to read the documentation of each and every baddie. If possible, read the documentation of each and every method of that particular baddie. Okay, so already we have one baddie in a customer or data. In that baddie, we have the interface. In that interface, we have many methods. What is one of the method? Check all data. We understood when that method is getting called. When that method is getting called, when I click on what? Save button. So now, but what I want here, whenever the user clicks on that company code data button on the application toolbar, that screen is what? Displayed. In that displayed screen, reconciliation account field should be defaulted. Okay, so see here, if I go to SC18, in the same baddie, right? Customer data is an enhancement spot. What is the baddie definition? Customer data. This baddie has got this interface. In this interface, we have many methods. Check all data. We understood this method will be called by SAP when you click on save button, final checks. So what is the requirement now? If the user clicks on, while creating the customer, if the user provides company code field value, that button will be available on the application toolbar. Na? If the user clicks on that button, the screen is displayed. In that displayed screen, that reconciliation account field should be defaulted. So I need to check the documentation of each and every method. So if you see the documentation of check all data, right? How do you read the documentation? Two component. What is this? Final checks. This method is called when you try to save the customer. So you can see it like this. You have to check the documentation of each and every method. You can see one of the method here. What is this? Preset values company code. Preset values company code. What is this here? Instance method. Pre-assign can be one dependent of the general data. Pre-assign can be one. What is the field name? Reconciliation account. We have collected the technical information. What is the name of the field? AKONT. It is part of which table? Can be one only. Na? So pre-assign can be one dependent of the general data. Let me read any documentation available. I'll put the cursor. Choose go to documentation to component. Pre-assign so and so. Functionality. With this method, you can pre-assign values. You can pre-assign values to the company code data. Table what? LFB1. Understood? LFB1. LFB1. Na, acha. In our case, what is the table name? Actually, there's a bug in the document. It's not LFB1, it is KNB1. Understood? KNB1, but they gave it as LFB1. LFB1 is also there, but it's a vendor to vendor master. Okay, company code data. The general data is also is pre-assigned is possible to pre-assign. Yeah, you can see it. This method has got the following import parameter. This method has the following changing parameter. So we know changing parameter will act as both import and what? Export. There is a parameter here, E underscore KNB1 customer master company code. So by reading the documentation, what we understood is it is clearly saying that pre-assign can be one dependent. You can pre-assign values to the company code data table what? KNB1, not LFB1, KN. It's a bug in the documentation. KNB1. Understood? So if you see the parameters, yeah, it has got three parameters. We have one parameter what? E underscore KN1. It is a changing parameter. It is of type what? KNB1. Our validation field belongs to this only, na? This particular table only, KNB1. What is the parameter which is carrying that? E underscore KNB1, customer master company code. Okay, so in KNB1, what is the table? What is the field name? AKONT. Let me check what are the possible values available. If I run the T code XD01, I'll give the company code, some company code. I'll go inside. I'll provide the mandatory data. Done. I'll click on what? See here. I'll not click on save button. I'll click on company code data. Yeah, reconciliation account. If you browse this, these are the available values. One of the values I'll take this 140000. This value I want to default. This I want to show by default. This is the value I want to populate by default. 140000. It's a character field, AKONT. So let's see how to implement. Already this BADI has got one implementation. How do you cross check? If you go to SC18, this is the enhancement spot. If I go inside, this BADI definition has got what? One implementation. What is that implementation? Z cust IMPL1, which is part of which enhancement implementation? Z ENH IMPL1. Now, what are the second implementation you want to provide? You decide whether you want it in this enhancement implementation or separate enhancement implementation. Am I clear? So I want to use the same enhancement implementation. So see this, observe this carefully. Within the same enhancement implementation, I want to provide one more bad implementation. So where do we provide the implementation? SC19. So see this. If I choose new BADI, if I provide the enhancement spot, if I click on create implementation, it is asking to create what? New enhancement implementation. This navigation always allows us to create what? New enhancement implementation. What is my requirement? I want to provide one more BADI implementation in the same existing enhancement implementation. So I will not go for this navigation. Let me go for this navigation. Am I clear? So no one will tell us to use this or this. Since I want within the same enhancement implementation, I want one more BADI implementation. I am following this navigation. I'll choose classic BADI. What is the BADI name? Customer data. I'll say create implementation. What is the implementation name? I'll give the name as something zcust impl2. I'll give the name as zcust impl2. Continue. Yeah. Implementation short text. I'll say implementation 2. I'll go to interface tab. Based on your implementation name, SAP itself has proposed what? The implementation class name. What is the naming convention? CL underscore IM underscore so and so. So what is the method you want to implement now? Preset values company code. So I'll double click on what? Preset values company code. In the last session, in all the BADI implementations, I implemented the same method what? Check all data. Now, in this second BADI implementation, I am implementing the other method. So I'll double click on preset values company code. Do you want to save? Yes. I'll save this BADI implementation. Implementation will be migrated. So it is asking to select or create the enhancement implementation. I can go for creating the new enhanced implementation or choose the existing enhanced implementation. What is that? ZENHIMPL1. This only, na? ZENHIMPL1. I'll choose the existing enhancement implementation. Continue. Enhancement implementation adjustment status answer. Enhancement is in adjustment mode. Before the enhancement implementation can be, it must be adjusted. Okay, I'll click on adjust. Right. So done. Adjust the enhancement implementation. Okay, it is giving some issue, no problem. I'll go to enhancement implementation details. So understood. In this enhancement implementation, already we are having what? One BADI implementation. I'll go for new BADI implementation. I'll click on what? Create BADI implementation once again. Actually, I gave it before only, but it is not giving. It is not proceeding. That's the reason. Again, I'm going for what? New BADI implementation. Create BADI implementation. What is the BADI definition? In this enhancement spot, we have only one BADI definition. What is that? Customer underscore add underscore data. What is the implementation name you want to give? zcust impl2. What is the implementing class? zcl underscore im underscore cust impl2. Short text. I'll give the short text as something. Second implementation, continue. Yeah, you can see one more BADI implementation got created. Double click on implementing class. What is the method you want to implement? Preset values company code. Double click on this. Yeah, it has opened up preset values company code. What is the parameter we have to use here? E underscore k. It's a changing parameter, na, which will act as both what? Both import and export. So I'll say E underscore knb1 hyphen. What is the field? AKONT only, na. What is the screen field name? AKONT. So E underscore knb1. It is of type what? Knb hyphen AKONT equal to. I'll give some default value. I'm giving some default value. If you don't want to hard code within the method, you write some select query, get into some field and then assign it. Okay, done. Save it. Check for the syntax. Activate this. Done. It is errors or problems discovered during check. What do you want to do? I'll say activate anyway. Let's see what happens. It is activated. I'll try to put the breakpoint here. Let me check whether it will set the breakpoint or not. Breakpoint is set. Done. Go back. Yeah, better we activate the implementation class. Double click on this. Activate the implementation class. Implementation class is activated. I'll go back. Activate your enhancement implementation. Active object generated. Done. So what happened here? My BADI enhanced implementation must still be adjusted. ENHIMPL1 still must be adjusted. Let's see what happens. It is showing it as inactive. I'll try to activate this. What happened? Again, it is asking the same navigations. Interface method is not implemented. I'm going by the errors. Interface method listed below are not implemented by the implementing class. If these methods are called at runtime, abnormal termination can occur. So it is saying that okay, these methods are in the first implementation. I implemented only one method, na? Check add all. Check all data. Okay, other methods I said SAP will provide the null implementation, but in this case it has not provided any null implementation. That's why I think it is giving the error. Can I implement from here? I'll click on implement. Yeah, at least null implementation. Actually, it has to be done by SAP, but it is not done, so I'm doing it manually. So go by the errors. Don't try to remember the navigations. Adjust the enhancement implementation is not automatically adjustable. Okay, I'll do one thing. Let me select all the methods at a time and I'll try to implement. I'm holding the control key, not allowing. Okay, instead of doing it from here, I'll do one thing. Let me go to that implementation. Just cancel all these things. Right, I'll go to the first implementation. What is the first implementation? ZENHIMPL1. This enhancement implementation change. It has got two BADI implementations. Let me go to this. Okay, in the first implementation, I'll go to this implementing class. I'll open it in change mode. I'll try to activate. Or let me double click on each method and I'll say activate. Actually, it has to do the implementation automatically. It is not doing, so I am doing it manually. This anyhow we have done it. It may take some time, but we have to go by the errors. I'm double clicking on each method and I'm providing the null implementation. Actually, it has to be done by SAP itself. So if it is doing automatically, we need not do it. But in this case, it has not done. That's why it is unable to adjust. Let's see whether it will work now or not. I'll activate the implementation class once again. Done, activated. Go back. Okay, save it. Check for the syntax error. Activate this. Check for the syntax errors. Check for any without errors. Okay, done. I'll activate this. Done, it is activated. Okay, so let's see now. If I go to SC18, this is the enhancement spot. This enhancement spot has got what? One BADI definition. This BADI definition has got what? Two implementations stored under what? Same enhancement implementation. If I double click on this, yes, you can see here we have two BADI implementations, Z-Cast IMPL1, Z-Cast IMPL2. Both are what? Implement is active now. Both are stored in what? Same enhancement. It is active. So let's test it now. Let's test it. So I'll run the T code what? XD01. Try to understand. XD01. Okay, I will not give any company code. I'll not give any company code. I'll give the account group. Done. I'll go inside. So since I didn't give the company code, I don't have any button called as what? Button by name what? Company code. Right? So I'll try to save it. Right? It is calling which method? Check all data. Done F8. So it is stopping me to save the customer. So I'll go to control data. I'll provide some this thing, save it. Okay, again it is triggering. I'll say F8. Yes. If condition is not satisfied now, it has allowed me to what? Create. So what is the understanding here? What is the other method I implemented? Preset values company code. Is that method is called? No. Understood? When I click on the save button, only one method got called. What is that method? Check all data. Now I'll give the company code, some company code I'll give. I'll give it as 1000. I'll go inside. Done. I'll give some this thing. Right? I can go to what this one. Before that, I'll click on company code data. Earlier, when I click on save button, what is the method called? Check all data. Now I'll click on what? Company code data. See what happens. When I click on company code data, good. What is happening here? That preset values company code method is getting called, and that method has got one active implementation. It is available inside second bad implementation, so that is getting called. Understood? So the overall summary is, depending on the user actions, the appropriate method gets called. At different places, different methods gets called. Whenever that method is called by SAP, SAP will check whether that method has got any implementations. If it contains any implementations, all the implementation will be executed one after the other. So I'll say F8 here. I'm saying F8, it is keeping on calling. Good. I got the default value now. Unless it is defaulting. Now I'll try to save the customer. Now what happened? Again it is calling what? Acha, see here. When I click on save button also, it is calling what? Preset values company code. I'll say F8, F8. Multiple times it is calling. I'll say F8. Yeah, now it is calling what? Check all data. Understood? So when I click on save button, it has called preset values company code also, and is calling what? Check all data. We cannot control that. All these are inbuilt by what? SAP. I'll say F8. Yes, industry key is mandatory. So I'll go to control data. I'll give the industry here. I'll save it. Yeah. When I save it, it is calling which method? Check all data. I said F8. I said F8, so it is taking some time. Oh, it has created. Sorry, it got stuck. You can see I got the message. Customer 301538 has been created for the company code what? 1000. Okay, so it has created. Let me stop the transaction. It has created. What is that? 301538 has been created for the company code what? 1000. Successfully created. So point you have to understand is, if the BADI is multiple use, what is the meaning? I can provide any number of what? Active implementations. In each implementation, I can implement any of the methods. So in the first implementation, I implemented what method? Check all data. In the second implementation, I implemented what? Preset values company code. Am I clear? So why I should go for second implementation? In the first implementation only I can implement that one. Yes, I can implement. But the problem is, if I do all the implementations, in a single BADI implementation, what happens? If the BADI implementation is deactivated, all the validation gets deactivated. But customer sometimes wants the first validation, customer may want the second validation at later point of time, or he wants both. So that's the reason, if it is a multiple use, try to implement them in not separate implementation, so that we have better control of what? Activation and what? Inactivation. If you write all the things in the only one bad implementation, the problem is what? When you deactivate that bad implementation, all the validations will be switched off. When you activate, all the validation will be switched on. But Sometimes customer may want some functionality, sometimes customer may want some other functionality. So if you provide in separate implementation, the maintenance will be what? Easy. That is the reason we will always go for BADIs. In case of customer exit, always it supports what? Single implementation. Na? So if I implement everything in a single customer exit implementation, you'll have the same problem. If you activate, all the validation will be switched on. If you inactivate, if you deactivate, all the validation will be switched off. I don't have a control to switch off and switch off what? A specific implementation. If it is a multiple use BADI, I'll have that particular control. Yeah. Any questions? Please ask. So we understood how to implement the BADIs. We understood the advantage of multiple use BADIs. What is the advantage? We can switch off and switch on specific functionality. So in this case, if I go to SC18, observe here, if I go to SC18, this BADI has got what? How many implementations? Two implementations, right? Now, after 6 months, customer wants to switch off this functionality. What is that? Defaulting that reconciliation account has to be switched off, right? So what I can do, I can go to this implementation, I can deactivate. Already we have seen how to deactivate now. If I double click on this, it has opened that, right? I'll open this in change mode, right? So this, I'll deselect the checkbox. What? Second one, I'm deactivating that. Okay, so save it, check for the syntax error, activate this. Activate the enhanced implementation, but I deactivated what? The second one. So if you go back to SC18, if I refresh once again, if I display, yeah, you can see it has got two implementations, but one of them is what? Deactivate. Implementation is not called. So if I run the T code now, what is the T code? XD01. I gave the breakpoint there, but it will not stop. I'll give the company code 1000, right? So I'll give that one done. Yeah, I'll click on what? Company code data. Did I, it is stop there? No, I'm not getting default because they are switched off. That is the reason we always go for baddies instead of what? Customer exit. Because if the baddie is multiple use, I can provide n number of implementations separately. And at any point of time, I can switch off or switch on what? A specific implementation. The maintenance will be easy in case of what? Baddies. Yeah, any questions? Right, so I'll stop for today. Next class, that is on Monday. Monday we'll have the next class, not tomorrow. We'll have it on Monday only. So Monday, what we'll do is, um, today we are in the last two sessions, we have seen how to work with the standard BADI. SAP has given the provision to create the custom BADI also. So we will see how to create the custom BADI in the next session. In that only, we'll discuss the concept of filters. After that, we'll come back to one more example on standard BADI for screen enhancements. Already we have covered screen enhancements in customer exits. We'll see screen enhancements in BADIs also, but before that we need to discuss what custom BADI. So in the real time, do we create custom BADI? Means yes, we will create. But since the developer doesn't have strong knowledge of this object oriented and custom BADIs concept, generally they'll not prefer. But if you have a strong knowledge on this BADIs, we can create it. Okay, so when SAP has given the provision, means do we use in real time? Yes, we will use. It depends upon the knowledge level of your project team. Okay, so next class will be on Monday. By end of today evening, I'll share the material also, whichever I have not shared for the last couple of sessions materials. Recordings already I've shared. So today's recording and the last two sessions material, I'll share it by end of today. Again, it's personal request. Please don't share the recordings and material outside your network, you'll be the loser. I am not the loser. You are cheating yourself. You are cheating Lord Saraswati. Okay. So when we are genuine, you also be genuine. Okay. I don't want to name the participant. Okay. So not only this batch, in other batch also same thing is happening. Abruptly, our Gensoft team will stop the meeting ID. That also I'm saying. So please, personal request, please don't spread the recordings outside your network and material also outside your network. Okay. Chala then. So any questions? Right. So we'll have the next session on what? Monday. Thank you, everyone.